We are talking about being a witness. And so what we've decided we wanted to do is on Sundays we're talking about being a witness, and we're giving you little short, pithy little ways that you can present the gospel. And then we decided what we wanted to do during the Lenten services was have a conversation, because witnessing is all about a conversation. So a fellow that you have seen around here for probably 14 years, Bruce Ewing, he grew up in New York State, was trained in college to be a choir director, but then got into showbiz. So we're going to have a little conversation with him about his life and then about his ministry as it's impacted folks through these many years. So, Bruce, when did you first get into show business?
I was in 7th grade. I was horrible at Little League, and my dad was a Little League coach, and a very patient Little League coach. And after so many years of doing it, my father said to me, "Do you want to do this anymore?" And I said, "No, not really." And so, but he was into us doing something all the time. So he found an audition in the local newspaper, and I went to my first audition and got a leading part in a play, and just have done that ever since.
How many shows have you... Now, you need to understand, Bruce's career is not just in school plays. So tell us a little bit about how many shows you did on Broadway.
Well, actually, I've done no shows on Broadway, although I've done a lot of Broadway shows on the road. So over the course of my career, I figured out a few years ago that I sat down and wrote everything out, all the shows I've done and where I've done them, just so I could keep my own little history. And came to over 75 shows that I've done over time. Now, some of them were a week or two long. Many of them were a week or two long. And that used to be exciting. When I really got into this career and I'd have a job for a few weeks, that I felt great. When the job turned into, I'd get contracted for a month or two, that was amazing. And now I'm in my 5th year at Phantom, so okay. I'm really, really blessed.
Tell us about some of the shows you've been in since you've been in Las Vegas.
Well, actually, I came here for 3 months to do Forever Plaid. We were at the Flamingo Hilton, and that's how I got to town, and I was only going to come for a short period of time. But what honestly happened to me was I got here, and I got off the plane, and God said in my ear, "You're home." And I didn't know. That scared me because I wanted nothing to do with Las Vegas. 5 years before that, I refused a contract in Las Vegas. I was never coming to this place because it was desert and hotels, and I didn't understand what I would do here. But I got here, and God said, "You're home," and I started doing the show here, and within 3 months of that, bought my home here, and just I've not left.
But we want to kind of change focus now from showbiz and move it into the faith. When did Jesus become important to you?
Well, my parents raised us in the church. I mean, we were members of the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church. And so we went every Christmas and Easter, like all good Lutherans. We went every Sunday. And so I really did believe at the time that Jesus was important to me at that time. But really it became more it's kind of funny, but I remember exact dates sometimes. May 3rd, 1994... I remember the beginning of a spiritual journey where Jesus and I got really, really close, where it became not about religion, but with my personal walk with Christ. And that was a day that I first started just journaling and writing to myself every day. And just sitting down and writing and writing and writing. And I knew that my life was not where I wanted it to be. Everything was fine with work, everything was fine with family, everything was fine with friends, but still I had this gigantic hole in my life spiritually. And so that's when Jesus and I began talking in writing every morning. That led me to, that was when I was out on the road. And I was having a little bit too much of a good time in my life. And then also moving to Las Vegas. Unfortunately, the job was great, but I also had, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a severe addiction to alcohol. I am an alcoholic. And so it was during this writing time, though, that I figured it out. And I would just sit down every morning and just keep writing and writing. And finally, April 28th, 1997, God led me to an AA group for the first time. Interestingly enough, someone told me that if you went to AA, they taught you how to slow down your drinking. So I was willing to slow down. So that's how I went. And then when I got there and they said you have to stop, I was a little reticent, but I went along with the program and it works. So I really did 12-step it. Soon after that, also, I started attending this church, and at the time, Pastor Ray was doing a sermon on the 12 steps, and that those two things together, along with my morning writing, made me sober. I always laugh because I say I came to Las Vegas to get sober, but I did. And so it was really during that time, that was a really formative time in the idea of me having a personal relationship with Christ. And Jesus saved me and gave me a whole brand new life. And it was during that time also that then I worked with Greg Davis, who, we would sit in the dressing room and talk philosophy for hours, it seemed. But that's when he explained to me what grace was. I grew up as a Lutheran and didn't really understand what the word grace meant until a Southern Baptist told me. And then I found out I was then I made my way also to this church and then really found out what grace was about. And the more I've studied and the more I became close to Christ, I've come to understand better grace. We're all human and we all have that reticence to really accept the grace because it's too good to be true. But then we find out with Christ, everything's too good to be true and it's okay.
We often hear in worship you'll give little testimonials about conversations that you've had with cast members or friends. And how do you start a faith conversation with somebody, a cast member or a friend?
I start with a flop sweat and a deep pit, horrible feeling in my stomach because I'm scared to death. Which everybody, we all are. Let's face it. If it comes to talking about faith because we've heard it abused so many times, it's a sort of a scary thing to turn into, to move into. But within the dressing room and stuff like that, I work with a lot of people that have been hurt by the church. So I really try to find opportunities to share my relationship with Christ more than the church. Although I then use this building and our family to invite people to just come and get a little bit of a taste of it or to help them at least find their place. But really in an awful lot of conversations, I'll hear someone say something. What I hear an awful lot that always breaks my heart are people that say, oh, if I went to a church, the building would collapse. Or, oh, I'm going straight to hell. Or and it's always in a joking tone, but there's a lot of truth in jest. Or a lot of, people believe what they say sometimes in that respect. And they don't really, there's so many people that don't understand how very much God cherishes them exactly the way they are. I love using something I read out of Brennan Manning's book. He always says, God loves you as you are, not as you should be, because you can never be as you should be. And I just try to get into these small conversations when I overhear something in the dressing room, just so that if somebody says, oh, God's sending me straight to hell, I just yell back over to the other side or down the lane or whatever in our dressing room. I'll just say, no, God loves you exactly the way you are. And you just have to know that. And I try to get into conversations that way. Sometimes people will come to me and ask me questions, and that's always, I love that. And then but the flop sweat still happens, and I just ask Christ really, really quickly to help me say the right words, because I love those opportunities, but I don't want to mess it up. And the other way that I really like doing it is in doing the benefits that I do, and the times that I've had people here at our church. I love the fact that when people come into this building, at times we've had rehearsals here, and our cookie ministry sets out cookies for all the performers with a little welcome to Community Lutheran Church. And they get a little bit of an idea of just how friendly and warm the people in this building are. But also I love to I just put out an invitation to the cast of Phantom and asked them if they'd like to do a dinner here for Family Promise next month. And it was really cool that 15 people said yes. 15 people want to come serve what might only be 12 people or 14 people. But it's just another way to I really like sharing Family Promise with people and my work there, because then I also find a little bit of an opportunity to say, well, this is what it means to me to serve Christ. Christ has done so much for me that I just like to give back to my brothers and sisters in need, because it feels like I'm saying thank you to God whenever I do something like that.
Okay. What would be one piece of advice that you would give us about being a witness? So you've given us permission to be afraid or intimidated by the process, so thank you. But the flip side of that is there a piece of advice that you would give folks as a layman?
I think, the best advice, I think, is someone said to me once, be the Bible. I always see people hit other people over the head with the Bible, or taking a verse and trying to correct them with the Bible. But if we could all just go out there and serve each other and do what Christ says, Jesus said, what's the most important thing we should do? Well, we should love God and we should love each other. And that's the main point. He said, that we could put all other scriptures on that. We could hang all other scriptures on that peg, is one way that I saw it written. I think we have to, when we share, we have to use our own personal experience. We have to be able to open up a little bit and be transparent with other people. I make it very clear to anyone. I do a little writing exercise still from that May 3rd, 1994. I'm still writing every day. Now I share what I write. So I have some people that I send emails to every day, and I just share where I am. And I'm never trying to teach anyone. I'm not trying to say that I'm any sort of expert. But this is how I take a little bit of the Bible on a daily basis, and I share how that touches my life. I've just found more success with people when I don't try to say, this is what you should do, this is what you should do. You've got to become right with Christ or else you're going to hell. That's not going to work. But I can say to people, you know what? I talk to God. I have a personal relationship with Jesus, and He's changed my life in so many ways. And I don't know how to give that to someone else other than to share my experience. So I think the best advice that we can give each other is just to share our own personal experiences, our own personal successes. Why we personally come into this building on a weekly basis. Why do we do the ministries that we do? How has God touched each of us? Share that with other people. And I think then people will want to talk about it. No one wants to be told what to do. But we can share who we are and why we do what we do. And just how much, I have so much love for Christ, and I don't understand it. And I think that's where some of my friends just sort of laugh at me because I'm not an expert. But they enjoy the fact that I'm willing not to be an expert and just say, I can't explain it, but God is so amazingly good to me all the time. And even, it was very, I got a great compliment from a cast member in the year that my dad died and all the stuff that was going on with my family. And he was just sort of enamored with my faith, and he asked me how I can remain faithful and keep talking so lovingly about a God that was treating my family so bad at that point. And I'm like, that's life. God doesn't do that to us. That happens because life happens. But God's been there every step of the way, and God has always taken anything that has been bad in my eyes, and He's made it good. I always find out in a matter of time that something bad that happens really was a step towards something great. And that's sharing that sort of thing is I think, a good way to touch other people's hearts with Christ.
If somebody wanted to get online with your little daily writings, can they do that?
Oh, yeah. If just email me and I'll put you on my list. It's a really simple process. It's just me. So I'll just throw you on my list and I'll share what I have. It's very interesting. People don't agree with me every day, and I don't ask that people agree with me. I just say, this is what I feel. This is how I try to relate the Bible to my life. How does it relate to you? If you don't agree with me, at least maybe you're thinking about how Jesus really is working in your life on a daily basis.
So, thoughts that you have about how Christ might use you. It's often through relationships. It also can be through situations, common situations. AA is a place for people in personal distress or family distress. Come, and AA, if you're not familiar with it, it starts with a spiritual understanding that your life is out of control and that there is a God, higher power, but capable of restoring order to your life. So anyone that's in those kind of, sometimes it's circumstances that brings people together that they can share ideas in faith, and sometimes it's opportunities like this. But thank you, Bruce, for sharing your story with us. I love the line that I came to Las Vegas to get sober. That should be the title of a book. So.